Welcome everybody to the Serpent Tarot for another pick a card reading. Today's pick a card reading is kind of special. We are looking at a topic that I have covered in various forms before, which is past lives, but doing it in a rather special way and in line with some oracle or an oracle deck and a tarot deck that I got recently, and a bit of a story around that and how that all comes together to provide for a more detailed past life exploration for you, where we won't be only looking at one past life or dominant past life, but the range of kind of past lives that might be impacting various areas of your life and in what way. So the story behind it is that some time ago I purchased the Archangel Fire Oracle, and people who are familiar with this channel will have seen me use that in a number of readings, most recently one about Archangel and Angel messages. What I did do with this, as I do with all the decks that I purchase, is that I write to the publishing house or to the indie creator, whichever it might be, and I ask for permission to use the decks on my YouTube channel, because there are potential copyright, image licensing sort of issues, and I think it's also a mark of respect to the publisher or to the creator that you make sure you have their blessing. And Inner Traditions, which are the publishers of the Archangel Fire Oracle, which we are going to use as at the end part of these readings today, said yes and asked me to send a link to readings that I did with that. So I've done that. And in the process of doing that, they sent me their catalogue and said, look, is there anything else that you'd like to use? Which was incredibly generous of them. And I certainly didn't want to overstretch my welcome, so I went through the catalogue. They've got a whole range of really wonderful decks and wonderful books. In fact, for anybody who's into any of the esoteric, the spiritual and so forth, I very much recommend them. But I thought I'm going to really just focus on maybe one or two decks that I think would fit a particular niche in my collection, and I know I would use quite a lot for those sorts of purposes and would really fit in with the general aesthetic and the way that I do the channel. And as a result of that, I was sent two decks. One is an oracle deck called the Phoenix Oracle, and anybody who's familiar with my readings more recently will know that I see 2022, which is when this is being filmed, even though it's timeless, but it's being filmed in 2022, and I just sort of feel like this is the year of the Phoenix to me, and I think to the collective more generally. So I couldn't resist that, but I also couldn't resist it because this oracle is an amazing past life oracle. It is basically created around that, and it has a wealth of information around different cultures and races and character traits and all sorts of things across the whole history of humanity, really. So it's a very comprehensive, very detailed, wonderful deck around that. So that really interests me because I like to do past life readings like this one will be. And then secondly, I got a tarot which is called the Minciat Tarot. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that correctly, but it is actually a reproduction of a very early tarot, so made, I guess, around the similar times as the Marseille Tarot and so forth. And it has a lot in common with that, in that for anybody who's a tarot aficionado, the minors are very much pips, very similar. And some of the artwork you can see here is sort of very delicate, kind of woodcut, but kind of delicate sort of artwork. It has a sense of kind of Greco-Roman sort of era. So to me, it very much picked up past life energies, so very much fitted for this sort of reading. But the other thing that's special about the Minciat Tarot is that it has a range of extra major arcana cards. They have the various virtues, and this is 3 of the 4 of them here I've got for helping with the choice of pile. They have all the astrological signs, they have the elements, so it expands out. Plus they also have some slight changes to some of the major arcana, the order that they're in or the way they're portrayed, bearing in mind that it probably came from a fairly patriarchal society. There's the Empress, for instance, comes up as a different form of emperor, the High Priestess as a kind of duke, but that has some of the same sort of energies around it, and I will read it intuitively for what I think it's trying to talk about as I read it. But it makes for a very good deck to marry into this sort of reading because it does have that old world feeling, and it has the expanded amount of information that can be helpful around sort of astrology and so forth as well. So In today's reading, what we're going to do is we're going to start off actually with a particular spread that is put in the Phoenix Oracle for looking at past lives and how they impact on various elements or areas of your life, picking up astrology, picking up the planets, so Sun for life path, Pluto for transformation, Venus for love, and so forth. And I'm going to go through those both with what the general sort of information about the types of cultures and time periods that these past lives may have been in. But I'm going to use the book actually for some of that to give you some of the information, because there's a wealth of information in there. Then I'm going to pull back and I'm going to look at it intuitively for what the map tells me about the dominant energies in your life at the moment, some of the things that will be showing up. And then we're going to use the tarot to look at your life path, your love life in very broad terms, love in your life, passion in your life, and also transformation in your life, before we'll sort of close out with various pieces of advice, bringing it all together. So that's the reading. It's going to be quite in depth, I think, and I'm not sure exactly how long it's going to take. It may only take a normal sort of time, or it might go a little bit longer. Well, time will tell, literally. But because of that, I thought I would stick to 3 readings to make sure that I give each the depth that they need without making it an inordinately long video. So to help with choices, as always, I'll put out the numbers for the 3 piles to choose from. And as I say, I decided to use 3 of the 4 virtues. The 4th virtue that may or may not come out in one of the readings is prudence, for anybody who's interested. But I thought I'd use them as part of the choice here. So we have faith for pile number 1, we have hope for pile number 2, and we have charity for pile number 3. So most people will be familiar with faith, hope and charity as 3 key virtues. So hopefully the imagery, the nature of the virtue may help you choose, the number of the pile might help you choose, or some other thing may draw you to a reading. Of course, you can go to more than one. It's very likely that we've had a plethora of readings, and you may even find some similarities across readings as well too if you do go to more than one. But whichever you do, whether it's one reading or a number, the timestamps as always will be in the description box below, and I'll see you in your reading. Welcome pile 1 to your reading. So this layout with the Phoenix Oracle cards is meant to give us an idea about the different aspects of your past lives and how they impact on the planetary aspects, the sort of zodiacal aspects in your life this time round. So this card represents the Sun, which is your life path. So it is the life that most is impacting your current life path. This is the Moon, so it is the life that may be most foundational for your emotional behaviors, your emotional life. This is Mercury, so this is how you communicate and how you get information in the world. This is Venus, so it is around your love nature and so forth. This is Saturn, so this is around the structures and the foundations of your life, the things that have the most, in a sense, solidity and longevity. This represents Uranus, so your genius, your creativity, that which is new, and this represents Pluto, so that which is transforming in your life. So the layout is meant to show some of those energies that are present now in your life, and we will explore some of them in some detail with the tarot, but they're also meant to give an idea about the breadth of your lives, your past lives, and which ones, as I say, impact on the main things in your life. So the first thing I would say before I'm going to actually tell you the trays, the character trays that go with each of these, and then talk about them in terms of the planetary aspects that we're looking at. And then I'm going to go into it intuitively to say what I think the balance is and what it's telling us. But what I will say to you is that you have an enormous span. You may well, anybody who's come to this reading may well have had lives on other planets and other dimensions and all of that sort of thing, but you've certainly been with Earth from the beginning. It's very interesting. This card number 3 in the Phoenix Oracle is about the earliest prehistoric origins of mankind, and the card is called the Prehistoric Sorcerer, which is interesting because you've got Egypt here, you've got sort of medieval Renaissance and so forth there, you've got the Byzantine Russia around your moon energy, which has sort of prophetic energy associated with it and so forth. So there's definitely a sense of you bringing a lot of magical and esoteric power, and from lifetimes on this planet. You are deeply embedded in this planet, but because Saturn, as I say, having it in that particular place tells me that you have that sense of commitment and stability and structure to the world. You are very loyal to the world in many ways and take it very seriously, because Saturn is a very serious planet. But certainly you've been here for a long time, you've had many lifetimes. And as I say, some of them, whether it's in ancient Egypt, whether it's in Byzantine Russia, whether we're looking at Vikings down here around Venus, or looking at either Renaissance Italy or medieval Europe, for instance, there are, and even Africa from here, you've actually been in many continents, many sort of cultures and so forth. But let's go one by one with them. As I say, I'm actually going to read you the traits, the character traits that come with these particular past lives. And I'm going to talk to you then about them in relation to what planetary energy we're talking about. And then, as I say, I'm going to get you what my intuitive hit is of this about the map of your past lives. So firstly, for the Sun, we have card 5. And as I say, that is about ancient Egypt. So we're talking about the time period of about 3110 BC through to AD 640. The ruling planet is Pluto, so it's interesting there that it is sitting in the position of the Sun. So that definitely suggests to me that transformational energy is very important to this life path. You are naturally transformative, and we will look quite a bit in terms of what the Pluto life is, because I think those two will inform each other quite a lot. But certainly in terms of an ancient Egyptian sort of energy around your sun sign, they say there's a fascination with death in the spirit world, very, very strong psychic abilities, and you probably shift dimensions without even being aware of it. There's a kind of the veil between life and death, between dimensions or whatever. You can actually travel across that fairly naturally, whether you do it deliberately through meditation or whether it comes in dreams or something like that. You have probably been an initiate in the mystery schools. That would have been, if it's in your life path, it would have been something that you would have done. You certainly have a very compelling character. You do need to be aware, though, that this energy can attract gossip or jealousy. So if you take on a position of power, or your transformative energy is very powerful in the world or in some place around personal relationships, then you could have people who are a little bit intimidated by you. But certainly your life path is somehow connected to the mysteries, to what it is around life and death. I'm getting that some of you may be mediums, that sort of thing. When we look at the moon, this again picks up things around your emotions, but also things like psychic ability, which I think you definitely would have. Now, in the moon, we have Byzantine Russia. So you are likely to have had a life in all of these places and these times. And it particularly impacts on your emotional state, the way that you emotionally communicate, and including psychically and telepathically, I think. Now, the Russian Byzantine era was between AD 1000 and 1500. The ruling planet is Jupiter, so that's very lucky. There is something lucky and expansive about your emotion. You would be someone who is likely to express how you feel, and to have had some fortune in doing that. You may in fact even make your fortune through things that the moon would rule. So that could be psychic ability, it could be emotional therapies, it could be creativity, music, that sort of thing. But there's certainly an expansive energy there that's coming to you. And the sort of characteristics of that culture that you may be expressing emotionally is a wide scope of mind and soul. You can really think big. You have an attraction to religious ritual and opulence, and that kind of fits there as well too. But there's a very deep earth sort of foundation for that down there with Saturn. That you have a fascination with the concept of good and evil. So you've got a fascination here about life and death and good and evil here. So the big philosophical questions really matter to you. And lifetimes in these places really sort of fertilized that concept for you and why it was important. You absolutely demand respect, and particularly in this case emotional respect. You will give it freely, but if it is not given, then you would probably cut off the emotional ties quite quickly. And in fact, there's a bit of a feeling of that down here when we get to the Viking energy around Venus. You're very freedom loving and you're very inspirational to other people. So that period was like that, and you've brought some of that energy in. Then when we're talking about Mercury, we have Africa. So Africa, in this particular case, let me just find it in my table, is around the period of 15th to 19th centuries AD. It's ruled by the sun, so your communications instincts and communication ability will be very much tied to your life path as well. So your life path is tied to transformation. Your communication style is tied to your sun, to this sort of mystery school, the focus that was from ancient Egypt in some way. The character traits around your communication include being very proud, cultivated and dignified. You may actually give off a regal appearance. People generally respect you, which is just as well, given that you demand the respect emotionally there. There's a real strength of character, and you will stand up for the underdog. You're kind of fascinated, I think, about good and evil because you want to see balance and you want to see, I would think, diversity, cultural sort of supports and so forth. Because of this sort of love of the earth, I think, and love of mankind, you certainly give off an aura of confidence and refined beauty, and you're very courageous. So you communicate what you believe, and you're very, very authentic emotionally, and you demand respect, and you have a gravitas of understanding about life, death, good, evil, all of those sorts of things. When it comes to Venus, we're talking about the Vikings. So that is an interesting sort of past life to have around love, because on one level, that's all about sort of freedom loving, conquering sort of nations, travel, all of those sort of issues and so forth. It's in the period of AD 793 to 1347, but it's very willful, proud, a little bit standoffish sometimes, not showing emotions openly necessarily. So, but when you do, you're impulsive and so forth. So there's this almost sense, I think these two connect very strongly. Your emotions need to feel respected, seen and balanced, and then you are likely to take the kind of warrior helmet off of the Viking and become more close to people emotionally. But there's something about conflict, something about courage also in your emotional life, and that may be reflecting in something. You may astrologically have sort of a strong connection between Venus and Mars in your chart that's a little bit difficult. Now, the ruling planet for the Viking era is Saturn, so this again connects to here. So your Saturnian energy, which goes right back to the beginning, has given you that sort of sense that things are serious. Like, you are a serious sort of person. You're not really light-hearted. There is some real creativity and inspiration and joy in these cards that we'll get to, but really for you, life is earnest, life is serious, life should be fair, and it shows up in your emotional nature from this period of time. Now, I do think the card that turns up around Venus may indicate a time when a significant relationship occurred, and that you may have an almost romantic sort of view around that era, around Vikings potentially. As I said, for Saturn, you've got prehistoric sorcerer, so that's you sort of in your most distilled state and longest term state, and its ruling planet, as I said, is Pluto, so it connects to this energy. This is mysterious, spooky, wise, a fascination with the good and evil, the dark side of life. There is definitely something of the high magician about you, whether you're actually doing that in this life or not, and definitely something the mystery schools as well. Your spirituality can't be disconnected from the issue of good and evil. That is actually a really fundamental thing for you, but you have a very broad brush and very pragmatic view about what that means, I think. The prehistoric sorcerer card gives an extremely rich mind, extremely imaginative, attracted to the unusual, which I think we pick up here around Uranus and around Pluto as well. So very empathic, again, the sort of psychic sort of energy, but very, very strongly enmeshed in the world. And as I say, ancient. It's sort of shamanic, I feel, that particular card. Then we have the Uranus card. So this is really all about your creative genius, what's new and so forth. And for you, you have Renaissance Italy. So that's pretty perfect, I think, for a time period in bringing together all this sort of mystery school knowledge, understanding of life, the universe and everything, to be honest, into something that could be created or something is new, because you've actually got the card here of the Renaissance, which is as good a distillation, I would say, of the energy of Uranus as anything really. And so the Renaissance happened in Italy between AD 1492 and 1590. It's ruled by Venus and Neptune, so that's the sort of love of beauty and the sort of psychic and the new and the different. But with a Uranian energy, this is where you would have had a life that you learnt a lot in terms of how to manifest all of this serious knowledge that you've picked up into something creative, new, and so forth. The character traits around the Renaissance for this is tremendous artistic talent, creative, imaginative, original, could potentially only work and put energy into things when you feel inspired. So there may be a sort of thing that your sense of genius or difference or wanting to do something new, it's not sort of something you do constantly. It's when something really, you have an aha moment or an epiphany. It's certainly got a spiritual connection, but I think for you it's not just spiritual, it's actually grounded in, as I say, a very esoteric series of lifetimes before this time. And so there's certainly that sort of sense also with the angel of watching over people, of being protective. So I think that sense here where you, I think, have a deep love of the earth and of people connects to this sort of Uranian genius to help people as well, to almost be like a guardian angel, to have taken all this knowledge and protected people in some way with your creativity. And then we have the transformative energy. So the lifetime that was probably most transformative to you, and it's kind of close to this in a way, it's medieval Europe. Now, this is around the time of medieval illumination, which was AD 400 to 1400. The ruling planet, as I said before, is Saturn, so it connects back. It's sort of like there's a direct line between being the sorcerer here and being someone who I think worked with sort of religious texts, with the Reformation, with all of those sorts of things. It's a very strong and ambitious energy. There is sometimes a tendency to sort of hold back the personality and go for the cause. It is also possible to be a little bit detached, and this might pick up the Viking energy as well too. It's sort of like the mystical workings of good and evil and so forth that you connect to, that maybe disconnect you from, you know, the more intimate lifetime. So it's quite possible that in that lifetime you maybe were in a monastic order or something like that. So again, but it's about, you know, being a teacher, being able to connect people to that side. So what I'm getting overall, so as I say, I just wanted to go through the elements that the guidebook talks about because it's such a rich sort of overview of the different periods and the traits involved. I feel with you, we're looking at a lifetime and a life path now that is to almost resurrect. It's interesting because the whole energy around ancient Egypt is about life and death, you know, Isis and Osiris and so forth. My feeling of this is resurrecting that sorcerer from way back in the beginning, who has done many travels and looked in various different ways around, you know, how to communicate and connect psychically, how to connect more with people and so forth in a way that helps a community, but which also brings you back to your heart in some way, in a way that balances almost sacred and profane love. Because this almost, the transformative energy here almost feels like sacred love, mystical love. And then the Viking energy here is the courage to connect on the more, what they call profane, but not in a bad way, in terms of sort of an interpersonal energy. And maybe in a sense bargaining a bit with your own genius here, which protected others, to connect back, to resurrect that knowledge and find a connection between your mystical self, which you are transforming in this life, and your relational self. So this pattern certainly fits with what I wanted to look at in terms of the map of your past lives, because we're going to be looking at your life path, we're going to be looking at your love nature, and we're going to be looking at what the transformative energy is. But the bedrock is you know, very deep levels of past lives and sort of different ways of looking at good and evil, at genius and the community and helping people, at what brings respect to others and so forth, and respect to yourself. So you're pretty much a heavy hitter when it comes to this sort of reading, and I think you bring a lot of really deep knowledge, as I say, to what you do. But I think this lifetime is about, as I say, resurrecting that knowledge in a way that allows you to balance off your mystical side and almost your romantic side. So let's get into it with the Minutiate Tarot. So let's first of all pull some cards around your life path. So a little bit more detail, Spirit, please, for pile 1 around what this energy, this Egyptian sort of influence, it's Egyptian life, but more generally this map of what they have been over these lifetimes. What does that mean for their life path in this life? Okay, so firstly, remembering that we're thinking about Egypt, we're thinking about the mysteries, we're thinking about resurrecting that knowledge. You are certainly meant to do it in a way that you are seen for it, because we have the Page of Staves or Page of Wands, and we have the Six of Staves or Six of Wands. This lifetime you're meant to be seen. I think one of the tensions that I saw in this was between the mystery, the hidden, the sorcerer, and the person who had the brilliant ideas and so forth, the mystic and the lover, the sort of person who was in the community and so forth, and the person who was more the sort of lone genius. So part of what you're meant to be doing in this life is to bring all that knowledge in some way into something creative, I think. And I think that's why we had such a deeply creative past life being recognised there for the Uranus energy. So that energy is really your kind of Leonardo da Vinci, it's you know, your Michelangelo, it's those sorts of feelings around it. So you're meant to do something, I think, creatively that is seen. Now, creativity is many, many things. That you don't have to be an artist. You don't have to do the next Sistine Chapel, whatever, to live out that particular life path. But you are meant to have determined what this would mean to you, who you want to be creatively, and to have got that recognition. And part of that is about, with earth and water, balancing the material side of this. Who are you going to be in the world? How are you going to make money? And that, I think, is picking up on the Byzantine Russian lifetime with the Jupiter energy, that sense of expansion and being seen, with what matters to your heart, with the water. So sort of like how you love nature, and also there's transformative energy that feels mystical. And so it's somewhere in the connection of those two things, the balance of the material outcomes, and I think you're meant to make money this time around. I think you're meant to be established in some way. But you're also meant to have love, I think, that's in the world, that's passionate with this, with the two wands cards. It's balancing those two things in a way that is creative and in a way that you were seen. You are not meant to be sitting in a monastery doing beautiful artifacts for a Bible by hand, for instance. You're not even meant, as I say, to be doing the creativity in some large project, but behind the scenes. You're meant to be bringing all this knowledge and wisdom into something where you are seen in the world. Okay, so let's ask what that looks like for your love for you in this life. Particularly, as I say, that we've got this courageous, freedom-loving, but sometimes reserved energy from the Viking lifestyle, and also this sort of almost need to transform, almost a monastic sort of feeling. What does this look like for your love life in this lifetime, pile 1? Okay, so I think you are definitely, if you are not in a relationship now, you're meant to be in a relationship. You're meant to be in a relationship of equals. When we've got the King of Coins and the Queen of Coins together, that tells me two things. One, it tells me that it is meant to be equals. It's meant, you know, you've got two regal characters here, two of the court cards, and they're of the same suit. So you are meant to be with someone who is almost like your other half. This could be a divine counterpart, a twin flame, or it could just be someone, particularly if you are working very much in the material world, who is equally, you know, a material, you know, asset to you. You could meet through business or through something that has to do with the material powers of the world. And you could potentially financially help each other. But at the very least, there's definitely an earthy feeling to this, potentially earth signs for one or either of you, maybe both of you. But there is, and it's meant, I think, to be long-standing. These are both, in the court cards, these are probably the most loyal cards that you can get, because the pentacle or coin energy goes a bit slower, it's more sure, It's more committed. The Queen of Coins is often thought of as the person who keeps their home fires burning. The King of Coins as the one who establishes a family, a legacy, that kind of thing. So it's definitely saying that you are meant to be in the material world, seen in the material world for some form of genius and so forth, but with a partner. And if you are not at this point, and you may not be, it may be because you need to come out of this sort of Four of Swords is like the monastery. It's like the contemplative. It's like the hermit. And because it's reversed, you're meant to be coming out of that and make a decision, a material decision to do that. It almost looks to me like one of your challenges in terms of love and emotions and all of that sort of thing is that you have put so much store by the esoteric, the occult, that it's almost like the concept of two human beings being together somehow seems irrelevant to all that you've learned and all you've seen. But on another level, that's exactly how you're meant to establish yourself and take yourself forward. I'm getting the sense of power couple, to be honest. I think that many of you who come here, you're meant to be with someone where, I talk about the Gestalt effect, where the sum is greater than when the whole is greater than the sum of the parts. It's where you can do more together than either of you can do separately. There is something there, but you have to make that decision. It's like you have kind of cloistered yourself away. You're feeling all this change within you that's bringing forward the kind of the knowledge and the resurrection of all of that. And maybe it feels a bit overwhelming, but you do need to sort of come out. Like, you literally need to come out and get on the dating scene if you're not seeing anyone. If you are with someone, then there's maybe something that the two of you can do together that you haven't yet determined. But it's the thing that will bring the fortune. So either way, if you're with somebody and you feel it's right, then it's what can you do together that separately you couldn't do. All right, so lastly, let's look at this transformative energy. So we are looking at the whole concept of medieval Europe, and as I say, that sort of almost monastery sort of feeling, certainly the religious sort of energy and so forth, which could be about transforming dogma, could be about transforming things around you culturally that you think are outdated or no longer needed, for instance, or it could be about connecting those sort of dots between the various sorts of almost occult or esoteric background that you have in some way to transform. So let's see what Spirit wants to say about what you're transforming in this life. So this is very creative. This is very about creativity. I keep being drawn to the Uranus energy around the sort of Italy Renaissance and that sort of thing. If you don't feel that you connect with these sort of cards, and even with that energy there, with the Byzantine Russian energy, if you don't feel you connect in sort of medieval Europe to a Leonardo da Vinci, you may have been a Machiavelli, to be honest, or you may have been a Cesare Borgia or something like that. There is a sense of maybe if it's not creative, it's political, because that's the other thing, the kind of strong power, passion, energy here. So in one way or the other, it's either creatively or maybe politically in some way. You are meant to do something new, that you are meant to give birth in a way to something new. But you need to let go of what has made you feel secure before, in a way, because we have Cancer there, but Cancer is reversed. And Cancer is a sign of great emotion and connects very much to the moon energy up here, I think. And it does connect to the sense of prophecy, which is also around that Russian Byzantine sort of energy, so that psychic thing, but it's like it's suppressed when it's reversed. And I also think it might be saying that the overly protective aspects of Cancer sometimes is something you need to let go of, to let new passion, love in, or to let the new ideas in. Because you have a bit of a lack mentality. You have a bit of a lack mentality you need to transform, both materially in some way and also emotionally, and more so emotionally actually than materially, but nevertheless, they're both there. It's 2 5s, and with the 5s, with those particular 5s, it doesn't really matter that much whether they're upright or not. It really, I think, here is showing that there is something in this history of lives that has made you either undervalue your emotional life or put your emotional life above your material life, one or t'other. I think you've probably done a bit of both in different lives. And because of that, you've carried in this sort of sense that you can't be the king and queen. You know, you can't have that. You can't have it all. But I think that the transformation is to let go of that lack sense in both your emotional life and your material life, and let go of your need for self-protection, so you let this energy come through because you're meant to succeed. Okay, so let's get some other oracle energy here around each of those elements as well too. So we're going to start first with the heart code oracles around lifestyle and life path. A couple of energies there for you. Then we're going to do it around relationships, and then we're going to use, actually, and it's interesting, I just decided to use an ancient Egypt oracle for the sort of stuff around transformation, and we've got ancient Egypt with you, so I think it should resonate quite strongly. So just a little bit more information around the energies for you. Firstly, around the immediate time. This is very immediate, this bit of it, around the energies around your lifestyle and life path. So we have solution and argument. Okay, so it's possible that you are in a relationship and you need to argue about a choice about what you're going to do, you know, like what your relationship's going to be, what level it's going to be at, how you're going to establish something, who you're going to be in the world compared to others. Or it might be that you have to be prepared to argue for your case to get to the solution that you've come up with. What I think this would be saying, what Spirit would be saying, is don't underestimate the heft of what you bring to this. You have a lot of esoteric knowledge, certainly, but also a lot of brilliance and capacity to go into both what the community needs and also the detail of things. So if you come up with a solution, you will have by default the argument to take it forward, but you do need to be prepared to stand up for yourself. It does look like many of your lives may have been almost lives of renunciation, spiritual renunciation, knowledge above power and so forth, or you've suffered for it. That's why I'm getting this sort of sense of maybe a kind of a Machiavelli or a Cesare Borgia. Machiavelli wrote one of the most seminal works on power and politics, but died in poverty. Cesare Borgia fought and fought and fought in all these sorts of different wars and so forth, and eventually died on the battlefield. So there is a possibility that if it wasn't through a monastic esoteric thing, it was through that kind of genius of politics and war and strategy. But either way, there is a sense of finding the solution through being prepared to go into the argument for you. Okay, let's have a look at relationship energy around you at the moment. For this love energy, is this a choice about a moving to a new level or working together in some way with someone you're with, or is it about a choice to actually allow yourself to have love in your life? So we've got harmony and listen. Okay. So I think with many, you may be in a relationship, and this is about listening to your partner and realizing that you're equals and being prepared to make some decisions together. I really think if you're with someone, even if you're somehow in very different careers or something, there's something about your combined energies when brought together that would make something greater than either of you are doing at the moment. If it's about finding the relationship, the key thing is to listen. Listen to the other person. Listen to what they're saying, to find that complementary energy of the king and queen there, so that you really do find your equal and so forth. All right, so let's also look at the transformative energy, and as I said, we're going to pull a couple of cards for an ancient Egypt oracle to get that sort of transformative energy around you at the moment. So we get Selket, which is about magical protection, and Nekbet, which is about protection. Okay, so you've got two ancient Egyptian gods there protecting. It doesn't surprise me. I think you may well have been in a mystery religion who worshipped one or both of these at some point in your life. So I think you've got ancient Egyptian god or goddess patronage, really. And they're here to protect you. Both of them are protective energies. They're here to protect you as you transform into, I think, the person that you're meant to be in this world and the person you're meant to be with as well, to bring that energy in, to bring that into balance. You are meant to be successful. I suspect that many of the people who've come to this reading have not yet achieved what they really wanted to achieve in their lives, but know on some level they have a lot to offer and bring. They're just trying to work out the best way to do it. And I do think with many of you, it will be in partnership with someone. And many of you, that will be a love partnership, but it doesn't have to be. It could just be a very strong partnership and you sublimate the energy that way. But either way, this transformative process you're going through, you're being protected. So even if you're having to argue, you will be protected through that. And it's interesting that we had argument and then we had listen. So I think that one of the things that Nekhbet here is doing with the protection that's offered is to make sure that you can hear within the argument what you need to hear to be able to resolve the energy, picking up some of the character traits that you would have picked up in Byzantine Russia in particular, and also to some degree in Africa. All right, let's finish off with a couple of things. Firstly, I want to pull just 3 cards for some other astrological energy around this, and then we're going to have a look at what archangels are watching over you from the Archangel Fire Oracle to help you through this life path, love path, and transformation based on the matter of your past lives. Pluto, it doesn't surprise me. The transformative energy for you is very strong. Sagittarius, so this is picking up the fire signs. You may well be a Sagittarius. And new moon, which is new beginnings. So Pluto it's again saying this is a lifetime for transforming. And if you are feeling stuck, and some of you might be feeling stuck at the moment with this sort of energy, Pluto is there to transform you. And there is something in the detail, beauty, precision, and almost doctrine of change and transformation, given that you're really sort of drawing on that medieval Europe time around it, that is part of who you can transform into being. Sagittarius tells me the sort of freedom energy. I think it picks up a little bit of the energy of the Vikings, actually, all the travel, all the conquering of new worlds. But this is about you conquering not through war and distance, but through your creativity or your sort of your prowess in some way, with all that sort of like fire energy. And the new moon is about planting what you desire. So this is, again, I had this feeling that for most of you, this is really just starting to resurrect. You're starting to see it and starting to get a glimmer, a vision of what this might be. And so the next steps are to bring it into being. So last but not least, we had 2 Archangel Fire Oracle cards. So this is meant to show us some Archangel energy that is helping you at this point in time. So I think these 2 are very, very fitting for you, actually. And I think that they are the right sort of archangels to be watching over your resurrection of your knowledge and your ability and your presence in the world. Because Melchizedek is a archangel around spiritual alchemy and the mysteries and so forth, an extremely high order, powerful archangel that connects with you probably through the crown chakra, through the sort of prophecy and so forth that you would have been particularly picking up around the moon and around the Byzantine Russian era and so forth. And Akatriel is a archangel that probably comes particularly to people who are strongly clairaudient, because it's like the voice of God, the voice of reason, the voice of prophecy and so forth, to wake you up to who you are. So Melchizedek is telling you that you are a creature of spiritual alchemy, a creature that can transform all this Plutonian energy and so forth. And you don't need to be as constrained by doctrine, I don't think. It's more around what's coming from within. And Akatriel here, I think, is wanting to wake you up to who you should be in the world. It is a voice about success. And this is the underlying thing here. I think that we have in your map, Parwan, a incredibly old soul, and that fits with Melchizedek, who has seen many cultures and many lifetimes on this earth, spanning pretty much, as I say, from the beginning of Earth's time through to now, but who has maybe cloistered themselves away a bit in one form or another in a number of these lives, and in this life therefore is not sure, when trying to balance light and dark, good and evil, and all of those sort of things, whether ego and material success is somehow worthy or not. And I think the overarching message here is that it is, and that's what you're meant to be doing. And you are also meant to be able to stand on your own feet, but I think also find an equal who you can be with in terms of love, not to feel as distant, and not to feel that life is either to be understood on an esoteric level from a kind of monastic distance, or with the love nature here with the Vikings to be a thing of conquest and freedom and so forth, but to get that balance right and to allow yourself to really shine for who you are in the world and to connect with the right person. So I hope that this resonated for you. I think it's a fascinating map of past lives, and I think you've probably got an enormous amount that you can offer to the world, but you really just need to rate yourself, I think, and to just go forward and to listen to Akatriel in particular here about the fact that it's okay to be successful. It's okay to be yourself and not to just fit in with doctrine or community and so forth. You will help community and you will probably progress doctrine if you want to do anything religious or spiritual. But you are also meant to do something creative and new in this life and to have passion and love in this life. So I hope that resonates for you. I hope you enjoyed the reading. If so, please like the video and subscribe. And I'd love to hear about it in the comments if it does resonate for you. Otherwise, I hope to see you in future readings. Welcome pile 2 for your reading. So this layout is using the Phoenix Oracle to show the different sorts of cultures and time periods of some of your past lives, and then also aligning them with the certain parts of your nature that are best expressed through the planetary energies in an astrology chart. So for the sun energy, which is like your life path, we have a life in ancient Mayan cultures. So, and I'm just going to go through each of these generally, and then I'm going to tell you some of the characteristics and how they connect to that particular astrological planet, and then I'll do an intuitive read on how these all come together. But we've got a life to do with the Mayan civilization, in some ways very similar, I think, to Egypt in the sense of sort of amazing sort of buildings, architecture, very intense sort of religious, very interested in life, death, rebirth, and so forth. Very colourful sort of gods and so forth as well too. This is somehow impacting on your life path at the moment. So something in the energy of that life is very important for your life path. Then we have the moon. So this is your emotional side. It is how you feel, the emotions, the hidden, the psychological, the psychic, and so forth. And there we have the Hawaiian Pele goddess. And so that's a sort of sense of creativity, nurturing, sort of indigenous sort of type of culture and so forth. So there's something about creativity and nurturing that's important to your emotional makeup. Then in the house or the placement of Mercury, which is about how you communicate, we have Roman times. And so power and sort of almost dominating and reaching out in the world and so forth. You're sort of Alexander the Great, that kind of energy. So there's something in the way that you communicate which is a little bit dominant, probably, that is open to argument, open to sort of like getting the way of your will and the way that you see the world very clear with others and so forth. A little bit of a conquering energy there. When we have your Venus, which is your love energy, we have Yugoslavian sort of goddess energy. This is an energy that sort of exists even through to today, and we'll go into the character traits about it, but it does suggest that there is something, again, a bit like the sort of nurturing energy that is very, almost indigenous is the word, sort of very natural, very much of the natural world and of the natural cycles and the cycles of the moon. As you can see, that's important to your love nature. When we are looking at the card for Saturn, which is the structure of life, we have a life in Islam, so being or Muslim life, so a life that is very much connected to the divine, to prophecy, to psychic downloads and so forth, but in how that permeates a whole culture and how it connects a culture to the divine. And I think there's a really strong similarity between the Saturnian energy that you have brought in from past lives, which is about dogma and rules, not in a bad way necessarily, but also mysticism and connection to the divine and a cultural connection, because it's the same in a sense with your life path with the Mayan energy. And then when we look at the Uranus energy, so where you get your inspiration and so forth, we're looking at African influences. So there's very much a sort of sense of either very structured and rules-based and culturally sort of complex and spiritually complex energies with you, and also the very, very natural. And again, when we're talking about your transformative energy, we have the sort of First Nations people of Australia, so that sense of sort of Aboriginal background and so forth, life on the land. So for you, before I go into the character traits, there's a sort of a nature-based kind of side of things. There's a almost religious or spiritual, how do you bring the numinous and the spiritual into the community, and how do you make sure that it reflects and supports the land, and any kind of transformation that you do and any inspiration that you have goes back to the land, back to nature. But the way you communicate, which I think might be more influenced by the sort of Roman life and also maybe the Mayan and Islam than maybe these more nature-based ones, is about expansionism. It is about power and so forth. So there's something about you and the power in the world. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to tell you some of the time periods and the character traits of these particular cultural times and cultural groups from the actual book, and then we're going to have a bit of a feel about what that looks like intuitively as a map for you. So looking at the sun, when, as I say, we're looking at Mayan sort of energy, that covers the sort of time period of AD 400 through to 700. The ruling planet for that is Uranus, so there is definitely a connection between your life path and how you are inspired. So there's the connection between a very structured and ritual-based type of religion with nature in the way that you get that kind of psychic energy and sort of connection to nature and connection to earth. So there's a connection there. And the rules of this particular culture is about the ability to understand abstract knowledge. So that's why it interests me. These two feel abstract and spiritual, and it's connected to the natural. I think you synthesize these things. There's something in your life path this time round that is to synthesize, maybe even scientifically, environmentally, something like that, but it's to synthesize something that's more spiritual with what is natural. The type of personality characteristics that you may have exhibited when you were in the Mayan sort of lifestyle is being artistic and industrious, really strongly interested in astrology, the heavens, rituals, time frames and so forth, very abstract thinker, likely to have been very friendly, and very, very strong mental powers, but the visionary into the future, but connected, I think, down here with the Uranian energy to nature. You've done both, I feel. I feel like you've been in very structured lives and you've been in very natural, earth-based lives as well. Speaking of that, we then have the one around Hawaii. So what the card says for that is, just give me a second to find it. Here we go. It's around AD 100 to the present, so that comes through. These sort of like cultural energies exist through to the present day, so it could have been in any time in history really that you might have had this life. It's ruled by Venus and Mars, so it connects, and your Venus one is also this sort of sense of nature and nurturing and the cycles of the moon, as I say. So there's a very strong connection between the moon and Venus, maybe a very strong connection between moon and Venus in your astrology chart, actually. So that is all around that. It's about the necessary tension involved in creation. So there's something very creative in what you are meant to do in this life, and that's what you're going to feel emotionally strong about. It could be around a family or children, but it could also be around a creative project. The sorts of characteristics, so this is your emotional characteristics that you picked up as an imprint from this life. Genial, warm, emotional, a bit larger than life in terms of your personality. Very complex inner life, and that doesn't surprise me, between the sort of natural sort of elements in your lives and also the kind of more structured elements in your lives. You find solace and peace in water-oriented activities, so you probably like to go to a spa, have a nice long soak in a bath or something like that. You might have a rather dreamy appearance in your eyes, and you tend to be very inspiring to others. Your aesthetics lean towards the natural. You probably like natural fabrics, natural sort of organic sort of materials and whatever for artistic and sort of home furnishings and that sort of thing. It all comes from this, and I think this life as well, and probably this one. When we're talking about communication, though, there's something around a life in Rome that is really impacting the way that you communicate in the world. So it's like you brought in this more sort of structured, power-oriented type of way of being from a Roman life. And so that could be, and this is ancient Rome we're talking about. So this is between 814 BC and AD 20. Its ruling planets are Mars and Jupiter. So that's why it's very strongly aspected in terms of sort of power and courage and that kind of thing. So there is something a little bit, doesn't have to be overly aggressive, it could just be assertive, but there's something in your communication that is expansive and can deal with power issues. And it does rule the need to compete or dominate. So you're likely to be competitive. It's not necessarily bad. I think, in fact, there's a lot of strict regulation and natural sort of harmony that's part of your soul. So you're not likely to become a despot. But there is that sort of energy that comes from this lifetime. And it makes you energetic, powerful, and innovative. You can make change when change is necessary. So that's good. And the assertiveness and drive and ambition, you need to kind of keep them stimulated. You're not someone who would like to be bored. You need to have constant interesting things to do and communicate with and so forth. And you'd probably like a good debate. You'd like to be able to just sort of argue things out with people. So it may be worth knowing that not everybody does. So just keeping that sort of thing in balance. Particularly when we get down to the love nature and what will bring love into your life. So this is an energy from a Yugoslavian life, and we're seeing a Yugoslavian earth goddess there. So again, the creativity, the earthy sort of levels are important to your love life. This is from 4000 BC to the present, and it rules Moon, Venus and Saturn. So that earthiness has an impact on some of the sort of spiritual doctrines that you would believe in. It certainly has an impact on your life path as well. So, and your emotional nature, and I felt already those were very strongly connected. This is a life that is ruled by wisdom gained through many lifetimes. So it effectively is a card that says that you have had many lifetimes and you've gained a lot of wisdom. And I think they're in these three very distinct types of lives. Sort of, as I say, religious, spiritual, structured, very, very natural, and then also where it's maybe had a political sort of flavour as well. And the energies around it are a love of myth, legend and poetry. You're courageous, self-sacrificing when necessary, really be able to feel spirit in natural phenomena. So you're all over that. You're definitely very kinesthetic. You're probably someone who senses a lot in nature. You may be able to communicate with animals, all of that sort of thing. You're very, very finely honed, and you've spent many lifetimes developing that ability. You're a survivor and an ability to overcome against all odds. And when you connect that with that capacity to argue when necessary, you are a force to be reckoned with. Definitely. And then when we move to Saturn, which is the foundation of your life, as I say, with the Islamic lifestyle, that is very, very spiritual. It's very, very doctrinal within its particular belief structure. But it's also something that came through prophecy, because it came to the Prophet Muhammad. So it is divinely inspired. This particular card is suggesting a lifetime anywhere between AD 613 to the present, but it does suggest a lifetime connected to that. It could be mystical as a Sufi, it could be more within the culture and so forth. Its ruling planets are Saturn and Pluto, so it's very well aspected to be in the place in Saturn. It's the point of your life where that belongs. In fact, one of the things I would say intuitively about you is you have your energies from past lives very well situated for the energy of the planets. It's like you have a life path that has a higher purpose and a kind of foundation with the lives that were very much about that, and then lives that are about emotions and love and creativity and change are all very natural, and then the communication is the one where there is the debate. So you are very well balanced, I would say. The character traits that you may have had during this particular lifestyle: intense, powerful, troubled. Anything that you do definitely affects your immediate world and possibly the world more generally in a weighty and real way. You influence people without necessarily expecting to. A lot of it comes from this sort of deep sort of spiritual knowing, but you have a mesmerizing sort of nature and a real presence. And sometimes you feel chosen for a mission. You may very well have felt chosen for a mission. But I think in this lifetime, you're balancing it very nicely. But I think people see you as that. They see you as someone with a hell of a lot of gravitas. You would be listened to when you were talking, or you should be. If you're not, it may be about balancing off this energy. It is a little bit too aggressive, or can it be assertive rather than aggressive and so forth? Or are you hiding some of that energy at the moment because you're trying to nurture everybody potentially? So that would be the sort of one thing about balancing all that, because your actual presence is incredibly strong. In terms of your sort of Uranian energy, change energy and so forth, we're going back to the sort of very natural sort of area with a life in Africa, and the information here in time period that this card particularly looks at is around AD 1250 to the early 20th century, and in Nigeria, Africa. The ruling planet is the moon, so then this is a connection between the sort of natural world and the emotional, natural, creative centre. So your creativity is emotional and your emotions are creative. It's sort of both ways round for you. The ruling of this is the imagination and the subconscious mind. So I think that you are highly imaginative, highly creative, and probably very psychic. You probably pick up a lot from the natural world. The character traits can be a bit dreamy and passive, a little bit clinging to the past. There could be a little bit of an issue there. You like tradition maybe, but then that you've got over here with Mercury, this sort of expansionist, political, strong energy. So you probably veer between a kind of creative approach that is more psychic and subtle, and a way of expressing it that is more political and overt in some way. You can appear a lot younger with this than your biological age. And so that just on a very, very specific thing, you could potentially be someone who came up with or created something or had a new idea around sort of age reversal or cosmetics that help people look less old than they are, or something like that. That's very specific, but it's a possibility. Certainly very psychic and intuitive. And here, with the sort of First Nations side of things for the transformative energy, the card talks about, let me just find it, a time period between 12,000 BC to the present. So you're looking at probably pretty much one of the oldest civilizations on Earth when you're looking at First Nations people for Australia. The ruling planet is the moon, so again it connects back to creativity and to the nurturing side that you have. And it's about knowledge gained through dreams. So there's definitely a sense. So they talk about, First Nations tribes in Australia talk about dream time as being one of the key ways. It's sort of like almost walking between the worlds, connecting with spirit, connecting with nature, all of those sorts of things. So you would have a natural psychic ability as a result of that. And you have a keen interest in those hidden messages and dreams. You out-of-body experiences, lucid dreaming, etc. All of that's very common. You can be a bit sentimental about the past. So you veer between sentimental and wanting to hold to sort of rituals and structures and so forth, while at the same time you want to move things forward. I think what will balance that out is it will be about creativity, nurturing, community, family, and so forth with you. You may also have a very strong interest in archaeology or ancient history and so forth with those particular cards. So to me, as I said, you are very balanced. There is always the risk that you might tilt to one side rather than the other. So you could tilt to nurturing above all, everything for my family. You could tilt to, I want to just live in a dream time. I don't really want to be in the natural world, in the sort of more political world or sort of structured world or the matrix or whatever. Or I really want to sort of find my religion and my process and my rituals. But this energy here, I think, is the thing that's going to be the catalyst for you. The Mercury energy, which is about expansion and power and understanding. I think you have a natural tendency intellectually to want to bring all these things together in a way that works for you and works for others. Because you will always be nurturing of others, there's no doubt about that. And you will always care about the natural world. But this sort of side of energy from the Mayan and from the Islamic sort of lifetimes that you've had with the Roman, there's just the sense of civilizations moving forward, advances in civilizations, and the connection of civilization and spirituality. So what we're going to do is have a look at three aspects. We're going to particularly focus on the sort of Mayan life energy around the sun, your life path. What does that really mean at the moment? How is that impacting you? We're also going to look at the Yugoslavian goddess sort of energy around, nurturing and care and all of those sort of things naturally. And we're going to look at the transformative energy, which is in some ways for you the most ancient. The ancient connection to the dream time, to the other worlds, to the other dimensions and so forth, and maybe how we balance those things out and what it is doing in this life. So we're going to use the tarot a line for each of those. So we're going to start firstly with your current life path and how these lives, and in particular the Mayan life, is impacting on you now. Okay, so it doesn't surprise me in a way that we had so many cards here that seem to be, when we're talking about the love nature and we're talking about the emotional nature, that seem to be tilting towards sort of relationship, love, family and so forth, because there's definitely a strong sense of family. There's a sense of a legacy actually. With the King of Coins, I feel like that's you. Now, you don't have to be male for this. This isn't about gender. But it's about your life path is establishing the right relationships, the right friendships and the right relationships and the right sort of passion in life to create, I think, a legacy. Because if you think about the balance of all of these things, we have the nurturing and creative, we have the structure and the ritual, we have the connection to the natural world, and then we have the taking it forward. I feel as though the sun here, the Mayan energy, the sort of expansive, spiritual, colourful sort of culture and lifestyle is connecting to the Roman sort of sense of expansion to create in you a leadership role. But it is one that is tempered by always what is happening emotionally. How is the family? How is the community? How are the people that I care about? And so forth. And how can we make sure that we have a common vision in some way, and that we are our energy and our power and our ambition. And this thing that I think you do keep under quite strict regulation is balanced, does go towards the good and towards a common goal rather than just a single ambition. So you are balancing the leadership with the capacity to work with others, and it comes through the filter of love. And I think that's why we see this balance of your lifestyle. I think that most of you are meant to lead in some way, but whether it is leading in some form of career or something that has to do with relationships and caring and community, or whether it is leading in such a way that you create a legacy for your family, it could be either of those or both. So let's have a look and see the energy around love. So the energy that is really around this sort of sense of the nurturing and the natural and so forth, that connects so much to your emotional nature. What is the energy for pole 2 spirit around their love in this life? Okay, I'm getting something very, very specific just straight off the bat. So I'm going to say it, and it's only going to be probably for a small number, or maybe even only one person who's come to this. But I think some of you may be in some form of legal role that looks after family law, because when we get that sort of essence around the sort of love, family and connection around a material outcome in some way and finding the balance. And then in the love thing, we get the King of Swords. I'm just getting that for some of you, there could be something like that. It could be a career in family law or in family counselling or something, but it feels very intellectual. And it also feels as though you are either dealing with yourself or you are helping others deal with when relationships and love energy has not worked out. Because we have the Ace of Coins reverse. It suggests an opportunity that didn't come to its fruition. And with both the King and Queen of Cups reversed here, it's interesting they came up together. It suggests that there was maybe either you've been in a relationship that initially looked to be the perfect relationship, that looked to be a meeting of equals, but something hasn't quite flowered with it, that has maybe made you or the other person withdraw and go very much into their head. And I think this is the thing for you. I think this is the challenge for you. So for some of you, that you are helping others, and it's just showing that and learning from that so you don't do it yourself. But I do feel for many, the reason that this card feels so strong for me, even though I think in actual fact the things that are impacting you are much more your sort of nurturing sense and your natural sense and fitting into the rules of the community. So picking up the King of Swords, there's something here about the balance of your intellectual and communication power and what you want in love. So it could be saying for some of you that when love doesn't work out, you tend to become critical, you tend to become more controlling, and it might be a sign of don't do that. Don't go into that sort of Roman Empire, conquer at all costs sort of energy. Go into the nurturing and caring. But for others of you, it may simply be saying that it was necessary to disconnect from something that wasn't working so that you can get a better idea about what this really looks like to you. And I think the key for you there is a truly nurturing relationship that has a very strong natural basis, but which has a very strong philosophical agreement. So it may be that you were very drawn emotionally to someone, but you were just going in different directions, or you came from different backgrounds or had different philosophies. That there's something that didn't work out and you need to sort it through. Or it is saying, in a sense, you've almost parked your own relationship stuff at the moment because you're actually helping other people. All right, let's have a look at what's going on around transformation. So we get back to the most ancient, probably civilization practically that there is, and that sort of very natural dreamtime psychic energy, very connected, otherworldly sort of life. What does that mean for what you're trying to transform in this life? Okay, so you're trying to transform with air reversed a philosophy. So there is something here about a philosophy, and I feel like for most of the people who've come here that you're very, very clever with that Greek Roman sort of energy there, and very, very much in your head, and very, very able to be a leader. And that's great. And you know your stuff, you would always research and understand your stuff really well. But there is a transformation that you can't do through your mind. So I think what we're seeing here is that whatever this relationship issue is, your tendency to go into your mind, it's premature. First of all, go into your heart. Don't look for the details of things and the structure of things. Don't look to the Mayan and the Islamic sort of feeling of ritual and dogma and scripture and so forth, or that kind of feeling. Go into the sort of the dream time and the natural stuff. Use the energy of the dream time because this is not ready to be in the material world. It either could be resurrected later, or it may be that it's the wrong thing and you need to then find something else. But if you go into your head, it's not going to work. You create, because your mind is very strong, you create a sense of lack on the material thing, a sense of being alone. Whereas what you want to do is create a sense of a reciprocal relationship. And I do think for most of you, you thought you had it. You really did think you had it, but there's something that's not right. Now, whether it is that you just have become too dominant in that and you can fix it that way by getting a little less in your head and a little more in the material life and enjoyment of life, almost more Taurian in a way, as opposed to Virgoan, or whether it is that it is not the right relationship, you need to move on from that but move on from trying to sort of fix it somehow. Go into the dream time and the transformation to bring in something that's more materially reciprocal for you. So everything in your life is about family, love, all of that. So you are meant, I think, to have a really great love, and I think you are meant to get that sort of sense of legacy, family, and so forth, and leadership in some way. But I do think that this sort of Roman life, even though it's the one out of whack with all the rest in a way, if that makes sense, it's the one that's different in nature, is somehow, because you very much live in your mind and you're very mercurial, it's having too much impact. I felt that right from the beginning, and this is really saying the same thing, to get to what you want to do. All right, so let's get a little practical advice for you. So firstly, we're going to look at some oracles for each of these elements, then we're going to look at some astrology, and then we are going to finish up with the Archangel Fire cards that are there for you. So firstly, we'll look at a couple of cards around lifestyle and life path, the energies right now for you. Got sudden challenge. Okay, so if you are in a relationship, then there may be a sudden challenge to it that makes you really wonder. The other thing I'm getting too is that there could be children involved as well too around this, and that might be partly why you're needing to sort of think about the sort of structure and so forth. But there could be a sudden challenge which has to do with, is it the right one? Are you able to spend as much time together as you want? Something along those lines. Or it could be that there's a sudden challenge around your career or something in that space that is going to make you recalibrate what you want materially and to transform to something that you want materially. I think that the thing for you is, because you have this depth and this breadth from your lifetimes, you are a natural leader, and people look to you, and that, as we said, down with the Islamic sort of energy and life around Saturn, people see you as incredibly compelling. I think and that communication is really strong. I think your big challenge, and the challenge that maybe something is going to come, and I don't think this is bad, I think it's actually something you'll deal with really well, so I don't want you to panic. But I think that there's something that's going to come that's going to really bring this into sharp relief and make you realize that you have to get that thing into balance. You have to be a leader, but one that connects and collaborates and reciprocates, not one that people just sort of like sit back in awe of and do whatever you say, but you don't then get the fulfilling relationships and everything that you could have got out of it. So I think something's going to happen if it hasn't happened already. And for some of you, it might have happened already. You might think, oh yeah, I know what that is. It's a issue in my workplace, or it's some arguments I've been having with my significant other or something like that. There's something that's going to trigger an aha moment for you, I think. So let's have a look at the relationship energy around you right now. Reach out. Stability. Okay, so that would suggest to me that if you were going, yes, there's something that isn't fulfilling what I need at the moment, it's probably all is not lost. It is suggesting that maybe that relationship could be revived or recalibrated in some way, and you need to reach out to get that stability that you're looking for. But I do think the clue then is around these cards, is that reach out, but don't reach out with a preordained concept about what you want, because you are such a dominant personality that could create the separation rather than the coming together. Okay, so we also want to have a look at the transformation energy, and I wanted to use a oracle that's from ancient Egypt for that, because it's so much about life and death, rebirth, transformation, all those sorts of energies, just to see what else is around you for this transformation. We've got Nuit, stars and timing, and the Great Pyramid. Okay, so there is something in ceremony for you. This is why the Mayan thing is important here. There's ritual, there's ceremony, there's expectations, there's ancient knowledge. Don't discount that. It's how you use it, I think, because this is saying it's all about timing, reaching out, understanding something sudden comes through that allows you to sort of recalibrate your timing and the way that you do things and so forth. So I think it's saying that you have the knowledge to be able to weather this storm, if it's a storm, or to shift through and change and bring the stability that you're looking for in your relationships and in your life. But a lot of it is around timing. I'm also getting that, pay attention to astrology. If you can get your astrology chart done, or if you've had it done, pay attention to it, because I think that there is something around timing for all of this. And it's kind of a way to stay in your head a bit, which I think you like to do, but it connects it to the dream time and the ancient cycles and so forth, and to nature, and that may be a nice balance for you. So speaking of astrology, let's pull a couple of, 3 astrology cards for you, just to give you some astrological guidance at this point before we finish out with the Archangel Fire Oracle. Air, Scorpio, 9th house. Okay, all right. So that's kind of you all over. So the air is there again. Look, it's saying you can't get away from the fact that you do live a bit in your head, and you're very, very good with words. You're very articulate, all of those things. There's nothing wrong with that. And you may, in fact, have air strong in your chart, Gemini, Libra, or Aquarius. That's okay. Not an issue. It's just being aware that it's a dominant tendency for you. So connect it to your inner knowing. Scorpio is very much the dream time. Scorpio is very much into the depths and so forth. It's also the transformative energy of the Mayan civilization and so forth. So make sure that there's an emotional resonance and depth, and that you understand your own psychology. Don't turn this brilliant mind that you have on everyone else. Really look at yourself. There's a lot of balance in you, But that power and energy that comes from that, you need to understand that about yourself. And if you need to, it may be through some form of higher learning or through getting the advice of people with some sort of professional qualifications in that space that could help you. Also through travel, you may find that the best thing that you can do for a relationship that's foundering a bit is to uproot it and go on travel together or something like that, so that you aren't in the sort of workplace, you aren't in the day-to-day, you've got that chance to do something different and to find the stability within the relationship rather than just in routine. Okay, so last but not least, we're going to finish off with a couple of archangels to watch over you at the moment, going through this life path, love and transformative process based on your past lives. So I think these two archangels are kind of a good sort of energetic distillation of you and the breadth of what you are dealing with here, because Zapkiel, I may not be pronouncing that correctly, is a goddess of creation and the depths, very scorpionic sort of energy there, or an archangel, sorry, of the creation and the depths. So very scorpionic, very much going to the depth, really understanding your own psychology. That's what this archangel can help you to do, because I think that's the key. I think there's a challenge in your relationship life at the moment, or possibly in your creative life, but I think primarily in your relationship life, that has to do with not understanding how powerful you are and how much people listen to you and follow you, particularly with Metatron here, because Metatron is the scribe of God, basically. So the scribe of the divine, right at the top of the Kabbalah. And Zapkiel looks after Akashic records, so past lives, and Metatron is the scribe of all life and all creation and so forth. So there's a storyteller in you, and I'm actually getting that's a separate thing around the transformation, because the dream time for First Nations tribes in Australia is all about the storytelling, the narrative and so forth. So there may be something in that. And if you use your Mercury energy here, your expansive energy, it's brilliant mind you have to tell stories and narratives that connects nurturing and the natural world and all the wisdom that you've accumulated with lives in sort of ancient Maya or ancient Islam and so forth. That may be the way through, because it's you in the process of doing it start to really uncover your own narrative. And I really feel like Scorpio, Metatron and Zapkiel are connected there. There's a clue there, but you need to understand yourself, because I think you underestimate how people respond to you. You're very natural, very caring, but your mind is so sharp and your words are so sharp and your presence is so strong that may overwhelm people, and you may not fully understand what impact that's having. If you can really look into that and understand this map, then I think you can turn some of those more challenging energies around. So I hope that resonates for you, Pile 2. You have an interesting challenge. It is the challenge of the depth of who you are and the impact of who you are. But I think the more that you know that, the more you'll be able to moderate it and bring it into balance so that it works for you and for others. I hope you enjoyed the reading. If so, please like the video and subscribe. And if you care to share about it in the comments, I'd love to hear about it. Otherwise, I hope to see you in future readings. Welcome, Pile 3, to your reading. So this is like the map of your past lives and the ones that are impacting on this life in various aspects of your life. And each of these placements represents a planetary energy. So this one represents the sun, so your life path. And the interesting thing here is that you have the card that is about the early 20th century to the present here. It could mean that instead of talking about a past life here around your life path, this life path is a thing unto itself that these may impact on, but it's still about finding your own road. And there is a highly independent, almost anarchic energy around this. It's likely to be in Western civilization, but it doesn't have to be. You could be in another civilization or another part of the world. It could also mean, I think, someone who maybe has had 2 lifetimes within this last broad sweep of a century. So possibly you may have either had a relatively short life previously for some reason, or a long life that started in the century before but saw its way into the early 20th century. So there's certainly a sense here of either a past life that was very recent that is impacting on you and you are resolving in this life, or that this life path, because it is such an independent energy, it's such a, I don't want to follow the rules of others, I want to be my own form of expression, is so much part of this, so that you may either have inculcated all of this to create this in you and might have had lives where you felt repressed in some way with some of these energies, and so you're very determined this time around, or it's almost like it's a blank slate, like I really want to do something completely new and different. Now this card is about your emotions, and you have a lifetime in Islamic culture and Islamic times here, and it's very much around creating the connection of the spiritual, the divine, life to the divine, ritual, process, and great reverence for the divine and so forth, and that's in your emotional space. So I think that you have a very strong spiritual center. So whatever this anarchy is, it's not really about spirit. It may well be about whether or not the material world can live up to spiritual ideals and emotionally held spiritual ideals. Then in Mercury, which is how you communicate with the world, we have a lifetime in the Russian Byzantine time, and that was looking at good and evil and looking at expansion and power and structures in the world and what was right and wrong and so forth. So you have a very, very strong moral compass. If anybody thinks because you're different now that you're anarchic in a sense that doesn't care about right and wrong, that's not the case. It's just that you kind of reject the societal structural concepts of what right and wrong is. You want to get to something that's a bit more pure, I think. In the house of Venus, so the one that is talking about your love nature, we have the sort of Indian tribes, very early Indian tribes in sort of America and so forth, and they were called mound builders, and very similar in a way to ancient Egypt and other things like that, but just in that part of the world, in as much as there's very amazing sorts of structures and so forth that they built, a bit like the Mayan temples, the Aztec temples, the Egyptian pyramids and so forth. One of the things that this card talks about, and you can sort of just see it there, is the Serpent Mound. It's a place that psychics say is a sort of a high galactic sort of frequency when you're there. So there's very much the connection of the material and the natural to the esoteric, and that similar sense of potentially ancient knowledge given maybe from other dimensions or whatever that we get similarly with Egypt, as I say, or Aztec or Mayan sort of civilizations. So there's something that you love in that. You love that which is galactic and expansive, and that's expansive as well. It's about spiritual and moral and emotional expansion, and that is something that you love. And I think that the kind of energy of rubbing up against the world in a way that you don't like, that you feel like you're sort of pushing against with this, is because of a very strong spiritual core. When we're talking about your foundation and the sort of long-standing sort of influence on you with Saturn, we actually see a life in ancient Greece. So that was very much about social mores and so forth. So I think there's something that might have happened. My gut feeling here is that maybe there was something around social mores, structures, society, civilization that didn't live with your sense of right and wrong, and that caused you some sort of issue. So you have a foundational issue about what are the right structures in society, what is the right way to be, do we have that, or do we need to do a lot of transformative energy, which will be interesting when we get to Pluto here. But before we get there, we have a lifetime that's representing your Uranian energy, so your genius, the shock of the new. And this looks like a lifetime in medieval Europe. So the sort of depiction of this is things like the sort of, painstaking detail and beauty and precision of some of the sort of religious artifacts of that time. But certainly in medieval Europe, there was all that sort of sense about how you connected the spiritual to the material, the issues of royalty versus people that weren't in the aristocracy, lessons and learning and education and so forth. I just think there was almost a flowering sense of social justice being formed in you through some of these lives. And I suspect through lives where you may have had a reasonable degree of privilege and education. But having said that, you also had this very keen spiritual ideal about whether or not it was somehow getting out of whack with what really we should be doing spiritually and collectively as a group. So then when we come to the Plutonian energy, we have Hinduism and India and that sort of sense of creation and destruction and life and death and all of those sort of energies. So very, very transformative. So it doesn't make any surprise to me that there is a fundamental transformation. I'm not going to just accept it because you say so sort of energy with this card. So I'm going to go through them a little bit more detail with some of the time frames and character traits of these and connect it to that from the book so that you get that full picture of it. And then we're going to start to look at what this means in your life at the moment with tarot. So firstly, if we do look at this ultimate current day energy, what the book talks about is that this is meant to be just a contemporary Western symbol. It could be anywhere in the world, but primarily in sort of Western countries. It is ruled by Sun, Mars and Uranus, so there is very much a sense of the political, the new, the shock of the new, expansion. There is a real sense that you want to expand, but there is also a kind of a tension associated with that because it's the active forces dealing with an expanding universe, which is what this symbol is supposed to be showing. So it's you looking at what's happening, the expanded technological world, the fact that we're all theoretically, just a mouse click away from each other these days as opposed to the sort of tyranny of distance, all of those sort of things. It gives you an incredible creative drive, an incredible intellectual drive, but there is a kind of a tension and there's a sort of a sense and an understanding between creation and destruction, and that particularly around transformation. Do you destroy something to create something better, or are you creating something that destroys something that shouldn't have been? There's a real energy here. I think that many of the people who come to this reading, you're driven to be looking at the consequences of change as well as the engine of change. There's a fascination with opposites, a fascination with good and evil, with life and death, with creation and destruction. And you really don't want the mundane, you don't want to be bored, you want to be stimulated, but at the same time, you want to resolve some of these conflicts within yourself and within others. And I think it really is a kind of a conflict between the structure and beauty and so forth of society and the really deep spiritual connectedness that is part of being in the human race. So that's this life at the moment, and also potentially a recent life where you may have dealt with something like that or seen something like that. So I'm getting like maybe the Industrial Revolution or something, maybe having gone through something like that for some reason. Then we're looking at the moon. So we're looking at your emotional nature, and the Islamic life is impacting on that. And so it is impacted by Saturn and Pluto. So what is structural in your life, society and so forth, that feeling of the sort of ancient Greek sort of lifestyle there in terms of Saturn, and then also in terms of what you want to transform, break down and create. There is a deep spiritual connection to that coming from the Islamic life. And it's about the ability to unite, God, Goddess, Great Spirit, unite with the divine. It's intense, it's powerful, sometimes troubled. I think you do have a tension, definitely. And you're very mesmerizing emotionally, like your emotional fervor really takes people along with you because you've got that sort of power and intensity from this life. I get that some of you may well have been mystics or Sufis. There is a real sense of poetry and artistry around what you do as well too. It makes you really, really compelling. But you do need to be aware of that degree of power and what that brings to the space and the people around you. Intensely psychic, and particularly when you're looking at the moon there, I get a really strong sense of connection to the Archangel Gabriel and prophecy with you as well. And of course, Gabriel was in fact the archangel who gave the Quran to the Prophet Muhammad. So that sort of makes sense. So there's some real strong energy around your emotions and around your spiritual connection. Then around your communication, it sort of takes on with the Russian Byzantine a kind of society or communal, community type of aspect to it. And this talks about, it's in the period of AD 1000 to 1500. The planet around it is Jupiter, so it's about expansion, wealth and so forth. It suggests that the way that you communicate could make you wealthy, could make you expansive, could make you successful in the world. And you have a generosity of spirit coming from that, and people can pick that up, which is good because there's so much intensity and change around you that it's good that people can see you come from a generous space. This is an incredibly wide scope in the mind to conceptualize, to think big, to be the visionary. And you're a visionary. You're bringing in something new, but it's profoundly connected to ancient wisdom as well. So there's something in your communication that brings in something new, inventive, and very sort of freedom oriented. You are very freedom oriented. Here with what you love, as I say, this is around sort of Indian tribes in America, and the time period that we're talking about is between 200 BC and AD 500. The the ruling planets around it are Uranus and Pluto, so this sort of deep tribal galactic sort of connection is very much connected to both the precision and beauty of what you bring to your creativity and the creative and destructive cycle and the sort of like the cycles of time that's connected to your Plutonian energy there. This particular period of time was all about complexity of thought, but sometimes confused messages. So there may be a kind of a hint in there that love may confuse some of this for you sometimes, and it may make more complex what you're trying to do in the world, which is not to say don't have love in your life, but just to be aware it may be an area in your life where things could get confused. It talks about love of investigation and multiplicity of beliefs, sometimes that confusion, eccentricity, and you're definitely a bit eccentric. So you would love the eccentric, and people need to love what is eccentric in you. But it's important, it's kind of secretive, and it can be a bit self-defeating to not presume the worst. And I think it's almost the worst of society and the people around you to allow that love could come in and people could be similar to you and eccentric and different and of the new like you are. Because over here where we have Saturn, so the foundation, as I say, there is a lifetime in ancient Greece by the looks of things, and I think there's something about that that's foundational to this tension that you have, and which makes you a little bit wary, I think, of sort of social mores and so forth. This is talking about a lifetime in the period of 323 to 146 BC. So we're talking about a very, very, long-term, way back type of lifetime. And it's where there was a real emphasis on reason and logic. It was inventive, it was refined, very intelligent, debating ideas, that sort of Socratic method, the kind of sense of philosophy is what is the most pure form of everything. And of course, in other lifetimes, you've seen a spiritual connection, not so much this. It's very much around a questioning and curious mind and agility. But I just feel with this combination of cards, it was a difficult lifetime, and a lifetime where you saw a disconnect between the philosophy and the structure and the society you were in and what you truly deeply believe spiritually, leading you to how you then try and kind of marry all these energies into sort of newness and into your creativity. And this is the medieval period, the medieval illumination around France or European countries. And as I say, that sort of sense of the sort of religious and the iconography and so forth. The ruling planet here is Saturn, so there is a real connection. These two lives really strongly connect. You are influenced by whatever this social experience was that you had in this life to how you create and how you think that you can bring new ideas forward. And it is very much a stoic sort of life, an ability to deal with misfortune and endure setbacks. It's ruled by Saturn, as I say. It did mean that you had ambition. You were definitely strong and ambitious, but you were probably a little bit sort of shy about taking that all forward. So I just feel as though there's a life here that led to a life there where you suppressed some of this major energy, and you're not going to suppress it this time round. There is no way. Leading you to Pluto, which is your transformative energy, and that, as I say, was in a Hindu lifetime. So Hindu Shiva, so Shiva, the dancing of life into creation and destruction and so forth. AD 320 to 1300. Venus and Mars, so Venus, the sort of love for the ancient and so forth, is a very strong connection here. And it's the ability to integrate opposites. So it's objective, it's spiritual and fair, many talents, deep understanding of the cycles and the opposites of life. So what this is saying is that this energy you have now, which is this transformative, anarchic, in your face almost sort of energy, comes from a deeply held spiritual belief system and a really strong idea about good and evil, right and wrong, all of those sorts of things, a very dedicated sort of spiritual side that somehow got, I think, transmuted and controlled in more civilized, quote unquote, sort of environments. And this is not to say these weren't civilized, but in terms of a very, I'm trying to think of the right wording here, just very sort of about philosophy and very detached and very much about beauty and form and all that sort of thing, not so much about connecting to spirit or the expansion of ideas and generosity of spirit and galactic things. So you are reclaiming that with this Hindu sort of Shiva, and I feel also Kali energy around you with that Plutonian thing. Your transformation is to reconcile those two opposites. The way that we create true spiritual connection and true integrity within also a society and the way that we live as a community and so forth. And you're not taking any prisoners in this. This lifetime, you're determined to try and transform and bring that into being. So I think that many of you may be in political activism or journalism or social justice warriors or something. You're not likely, if you are following a spiritual path, to just sit behind the scenes and contemplate the universe. You really want to change. You want to create change, and you want to bring some sort of spiritual clarity and heft to this ever-expanding, sort of almost chaotic world that we're in at the moment. So no sort of pressure on you. Pile 3. So let's see what and it's pressure you're putting on yourself, but I think we need people like you. So let's have a look firstly with the tarot on the impact at the moment on your life path. This sort of, as I say, sort of take no prisoners, anarchic, individualistic, expanding, brilliant sort of energy that you have and your wish to, which we'll get to, reconcile opposites and bring things into balance through transformation. So firstly, your life path. Okay, so again, you're taking no prisoners, that's for sure. When you put 10 of Cups reversed with the 8 of Swords, I think that many of you have felt constrained. It's possible that you felt constrained by your family background, privilege, or lack thereof, something like that. 10 of Cups reversed suggests that those sort of energies around you at the moment are a bit chaotic or not giving you what you want, or you could have come from some sort of broken family, or you've had to break away philosophically from your family. Like, this would be a classic set of cards for somebody whose parents always, voted Democrat, so you vote Republican, or vice versa. There's that kind of energy of like breaking away from the family, but also breaking away from very material and egoistic sort of beliefs. Like, you're not about that. I think the interesting thing is, I suspect that many people experience your energy a bit like Leo, if it was the right way up. You have a very, and particularly with that sort of energy from the Islamic life, a very mesmerizing, powerful energy. And I think many people may mistake that for ego. You're not actually about ego. You're almost a bit disgusted by ego, to be honest. You really are about, getting some honesty into the political, spiritual, community world, whatever it is. And it's not all about you, but you do need to be aware that you are a powerful presence. And some people may misunderstand that. You're also not about just having the good life. Like, you could literally, I got that dervish sense here, the Sufi. You could go off and be a mystic. You absolutely could. And if you got disgusted enough with the world, you may do that. And that's fine, I think, if you wanted to do that. But I do think that a lot of the energy you have is building this fabric of lifetimes that has made you realise that we've got off track. And you can see we've got off track in being so material, because Taurus is in many ways a wonderful sign, but it is very material. It's very much about the good life. It can be a bit stubborn. We got stuck in that sort of energy, that very material energy and that very egotistical energy, and you do not like it. You find it too constraining. So your life path is about breaking through those constraints in some way. So let's see what impact that has on your relationship and love life, because you're very deeply connected to sort of like the spiritual, the intergalactic, all of that sort of stuff, the numinous for your love nature. But this is difficult energy potentially around relationships. So let's just sort of see what's happening around love for you in this life. Okay. So the good news is, with Capricorn there, that all this, and I think many of you will work within the powers of the world or in some form of debate and struggle potentially with the powers of the world or whatever, and to liberate energy from the existing power structures. For all that's there, Capricorn is also very earthy, it's very grounded. It does suggest that there is the capacity for a good relationship and so forth, but it does require a different perspective than bringing a different perspective. I think many of the people who've come to this, family has not necessarily been a good blueprint for relationships, or you've had some very tumultuous relationships where you haven't been understood for what you're trying to do, and you found them a little bit emotionally entrapping in some way. So there is a requirement for a rethink about what relationship is for you and having the courage to go forward and do it. But I think Spirit is saying you don't have to do it right now if you don't want to. Six of Swords suggests that you've kind of almost come to terms with something that might have happened around relationships, whether it's in your family or whether it's a recent love relationship that didn't work out. You have come to terms with it. You haven't fully let it go intellectually, but that's not far off. And there may be an opportunity for something coming up that is more along the lines of what you want. And somebody who might fight the good fight with you as well too. But you do need to change your attitude a bit around relationship, because it's like you are in love with the universe and the divine, and because you're on such a mission. But if you want a relationship in your life, you need to sort of shift that focus a bit and unstick it so that you can find somebody who is also like you. And I think you will find them somewhere to do with whatever you're doing materially. Okay, so let's also look at the transformative energy. So this Shiva energy, this Hindu reconciliation of opposites energy. Okay, so it's definitely got to do with the powers of the world, and I think you will become a leader as a result of it. The interesting thing is I think this card has come up for every single one of these readings, so I think everybody who's coming to this reading on some level has a leadership role in some aspect of their life, and yours is around transformation, and I think eventually creating the new order, whatever that might be. So I think that's there. But you can take some time out. You don't always have to be on the battlefield. Pick your battles, I think, is the energy here. Because sometimes you will end up in a battle because somebody is coming at you with ego. And you're not about ego, but they think you are. So sometimes it's like, just walk away from the ones that are just petty or just narcissists or whatever. You don't have to fight everything. Choose your battles, because you're supposed to be about freedom and about philosophical, religious, spiritual freedom with Sagittarius. There could be quite a lot of travel associated with it as well too. So you may travel the world quite a bit, which might be another sort of aspect of this card, which felt worldwide. But you're meant to bring hope. So it's like you do the battle, but you do the battle to bring a better outcome, to revive what was spiritually resonant, and to reconcile the opposites and bring the hope, to release people from intellectual prisons and bring hope back to sort of powerful structures. So you've definitely got a destiny, I think, and you've definitely got a mission. But you don't have to fight every battle. Don't feel that you have to fight every battle. And I think in a way, so it's interesting, I'm getting almost like a Gandhi-esque type feeling about this. There are different ways of fighting the battle. And if you're dealing with narcissists and egotists or whatever, just by withdrawing can often be the thing that wins the battle, because they will thrive off the debate and they'll thrive off the attention and so forth. So I think it's learning when to strategically retreat and when to move forward into battle is going to be part of the balance for you. Okay, so let's get some other advice for you. So let's firstly get some couple of cards that are around sort of lifestyle and life path, firstly, for immediate influences on you at the moment. Got Mirror and Foundation. Okay, so I think Mirror is picking up this energy I was talking about. I think that sometimes the battles that you're going to find people try and draw you into are in fact just a mirror of their energy. So I think that what this is saying is that First, it's saying two things. Firstly, as a mirror and foundation, is mirror or reflect the way that you want to be the change that you want to see in the world. That's probably why I got the sort of Gandhi sort of feeling around it. Create that foundation. But I think it's also that don't get involved in just mirroring type of debate. Always go back to what is the foundation, what is the hope, what is the new structure, the new order that I want to bring in. That's what you should be looking at. You should be looking at that foundation, because you know from other lives when the civilization, the community, the culture in some way was not created on the foundations of what you would think were the proper spiritual foundation. So it's always think about eye on the prize, basically. Let's see what we have in terms of emotional energy for you. Rekindle. Bond. Okay. So for some of you, there may in fact have been a relationship that you have moved away from, either because you felt that you weren't aligned, or it might have been that you were so much obsessed with your change energy and all that you had to do in the world, you sort of almost put that on the back burner. So I think that would say, and that could be the Hangman reversed, having a different viewpoint on that could allow you to rekindle a bond, reconnect. There could be someone in your love life or around you, and if it's not your love life and it's other relationships, it could be a friendship, a family member, where you can actually recreate that bond. You can reconcile the opposites again, because there's something that's probably more structural and philosophical that's been an issue, not at the foundation, at the heart of whatever it was. All right. And we also want to get a couple of cards from an ancient Egyptian oracle, because I felt like it's a particular culture that was all about transformation, life, death, and all that kind of thing. So very fitting to give us some energy around the transformative power and energy for you at the moment. Happy water spirit, and Ptah, alchemy and creation. So happy water spirit, don't lose your emotion in the midst of all of this. I think this is saying there is a risk for you, because you're such a firebrand and you're so strong and you have such a mission of somehow losing your heart, of even sublimating it with the particular sort of Indian sort of mound builders, of it making it almost bigger than you and intergalactic and all of that kind of thing, as opposed to something that could nourish you. Like, don't give up on the bonds that you could rekindle or recreate. I think that's just meant to make sure that you stay emotionally centered, as well as all this sort of fiery and intellectual energy that you have. Because we've got alchemy and creation, and that is the absolute transformation process, full stop. And it picks up that Shiva energy. You are actually a natural alchemist. You can take what isn't working and all the other bits and burn it down and create the new. That's why you are kind of about hope. That's why you could bring in a new order in some way. That's why you could be the leader in something that is created alchemically. So there is an energy around you of alchemy, and it's worth maybe looking into alchemy. Okay. Another thing it may be worth looking into, because you are so connected to the sort of spiritual side of things, is astrology. So I want to actually lay out 3 cards from an astrology deck to see what other energy is around you at the moment. North Node, Cancer, and Aries. Okay, so you may have your North Node in either Cancer or Aries. In either case, the North Node is in a sense our karmic destiny and direction, and we live out some of it, I think, in our current life, and we probably live out even more of it in our next life. I have a particular theory that it's possible that whatever sign your North Node is in your current chart may well be your sun sign for the next, and this is just my theory, may or may not be true. But certainly it's suggesting that you are on a karmic path and you are doing what you need to do. So I think it's an affirmation of do what you need to do, but balance these two things. Just as you're looking for reconciliation of opposites and the balance of the spiritual with community and so forth, you're also looking for the reconciliation of your own water nature and caring and family and love nature with your ambition, because you are ambitious. It's not ambitious in the sense of power for power's sake, though some may not understand that about you. So be aware that some people may misinterpret, as I said at the beginning, as ego. But you are ambitious and you are about the new. Aries is the first sign in the zodiac, so in a sense it initiates the new naturally. But Cancer wants some security, and Cancer wants love, and Cancer wants family. So, and there were some issues for you, I think, around family to start with. So there's something to balance that out, and that's part of your own karma, to balance those two issues, just as you are looking to balance and reconcile opposites within life in general. Okay, so to finish off pile 3, there were 2 Archangel Fire Oracle cards with Archangel energy for you to watch over you with this, that were with the Minchiate Tarot card that drew you to this reading. So let's have a look at that to see what Archangel energy watches over you. So I think these archangels show both your destiny, which is this leadership destiny, and also maybe a pathway through. And what I mean by that is Yehudiel here is in fact an archangel about leadership primarily, about taking a tribe or a group or whatever forward, and about sort of establishing something new. So I think this is your North Node, it's your destiny, it's who you are. But we also have Raduriel, and again I may not be pronouncing that correctly, which is a poet and an artist and a scribe, and it picks up the Cancer and the water energy and all that sort of thing. And in fact is depicted in this card by Oscar Wilde, who is one of my heroes of all time. A brilliant mind, just like I think you have, very, very able to work through society and so forth, but ultimately who suffered in society. And I don't feel that this is saying this is what's going to happen to you now, but I feel it did. I feel that you went through 1 or 2 lives, where maybe one life where you actually suffered for being different or having a different viewpoint or something like that, and another where you felt you actually almost had to hide away and just focus on the beauty and so forth. Oscar Wilde and the energy around this archangel also has a lot of wit to it. Wit, poetry, grace, all of those sorts of things. So I think there's something in that for you. It doesn't all have to be completely full on. You are a natural leader, but it's almost, I'm getting that sense of, you get more flies with honey, like something about the beauty and the poetry that you can bring to things. And using the different sort of technology and social media of the age of the modern world to get that message out to people. There's something there. You can coax as many people towards what you want and towards your natural leadership. You don't have to be in an endless battle. And there's something in the beauty of poetry and art and the balance of that, which can give you a chance to reconcile the opposites and bring your destiny into being, because I think you do have a destiny. So pile 3, you've got a really interesting life ahead of you, I think, and you're probably already well and truly within it. I hope that this map of your past lives and some of the energies that are now permeating from those is helpful for that. I hope you enjoyed the reading. If so, please like the video and subscribe. And if you do recognise what some of this is, I'd be fascinated to hear about it in the comments. Otherwise, I hope to see you in future readings.